Hello, I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society, and welcome to another Tim's Top 10. And today we're going to talk about the top 10 rocks at Gettysburg or on the Gettysburg Battlefield. And I like to refer to it as Gettysburg rocks. First of all, I wanted to mention that we have had a legitimate complaint that all my top 10 videos are about the Battle of Gettysburg and nothing about Adams County. So don't worry, coming up, I have some videos planned on the top 10 towns or villages in Adams County. I have something planned on the top 10 skirmishes or small engagements that occurred in our area other than the Battle of Gettysburg. And this would be, for instance, Hanover, Fairfield, Hunterstown, or Monterey Gap. And I think I might do a top 10 rocks in Adams County outside the Gettysburg Battlefield. That would include things like the Indian Sentinel on South Mountain, or the Alphabet Rock in Zorra, if you know what that is. But, you know, I've always been into rocks. And I think it's because when you're at Gettysburg and you're on the battlefield, there are very few things that you see that were actually here at the time. I mean, obviously the houses that you see on the battlefield, a lot of them were here at the time of the battle. There are very few trees that were actually here. So, you know, obviously you make a big deal about the trees that are that old. But the rocks, you know, soldiers touched the rocks, soldiers interacted with the rocks, bullets and artillery shells bounced off of the rocks. So I've always been into the rocks on the battlefield. And, you know, I'm not a geologist, but I have friends that are geologists. And there are a few books you can buy about the geology of the Gettysburg Battlefield. Here's one, Time Walk, which is a journey through time in Adams, Lancaster, and York County. I have friends at the Pennsylvania Geological Survey, and they come here for field conferences every few years. And, you know, I have some of those field conference brochures and booklets in my collection. And perhaps we'll put a link in this video to a website that tells you a little more about Gettysburg's geology. Most of the rocks I'm going to talk about are diabase rocks. And these rocks are part of a larger formation, the Gettysburg Formation, or sometimes the Gettysburg Sill you'll read about. And according to geologists, York Haven Diabase dates to 2,002.1 million years ago, something like that. You can look it up. So the rocks were formed underneath the Earth's surface, and pretty much as the ground erodes away, more and more of these rocks are exposed. So without further ado, number 10, the rock in the road. And this name was totally invented by me. And I'm going to say right up front that I am not above creating or popularizing names for the rocks around the battlefield and other features of the battlefield. And there's nothing wrong with this. People have done this ever since the battle, and historians have been doing this in more recent times. You know, prior to the Battle of Gettysburg, almost none of these features had names. And historians have come up with names for these features, like Little Round Top, the Wheat Field, the Valley of Death, or even Devil's Den. Were pretty much created after the fact by someone who promoted those names. Some of these names catch on, and some of them fail miserably. John Batchelder pushed the name Weeds Hill for Little Round Top. And he promoted a ridge on the first day's battlefield, Buford's Ridge, where Buford's men lined up. And both of those things, concepts failed. But he did promote the name Devil's Den in his early maps and booklets. And he did promote the concept of the high watermark of the rebellion. And both of those things caught on pretty well. So the rock in the road. The first I noticed this rock was in I think a 1888 photograph, a stereo view that shows this rock along the Wheatfield Road. It's a William Tipton stereo card. It also appears in the foreground of an 1898 image of the Wheatfield recorded by William Tipton. Years ago, for one of my lectures, I took both of these views and kind of spliced them together and formed a panorama that kind of indicates that this rock was in the Wheatfield Road, and you could ride around it. And in stereo, you can see there's a big hill after this rock. Somewhere around the turn of the 19th century, or the turn of the century in 1900, the Wheatfield Road was improved, and this feature was removed. But it was there during the battle, undoubtedly. I'm thinking the 1899 commission report by the Gettysburg National Military Park Commission mentions improvements to the road, and I kind of think that's when it was removed. But the rock in the road. Number 9, the Troth Rock. I'm not sure exactly when I first learned about this rock, but I spent a lot of time at Devil's Den in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. And I'm guessing I learned about it in 1981 during one of those days when I hooked school and came to Gettysburg instead of going to class. This rock was featured in an article by Kathy George, a former historian of the park, in a Morningside catalog. I think it was in 1984. And the article is reprinted in Gettysburg Magazine in 1989. Of course, in that article, in both of those, she makes a mistake and says that the trough in the rock is a pre-battle feature. And other people have made this mistake. They are looking at a shadow under the rock from a Gardner photograph looking across the Valley of Death. At some point after the American Civil War, probably in the 1880s or 90s, when Devil's Den became a popular site, a trough was carved into the rock. And you can see this Troth Rock in a whole bunch of different images. There was actually a spring behind this particular rock, and at some point they set up a pump and had a hose pumping water up and over into the Troth Rock. And you can clearly see in the images, and you can go out there and visit today, it's a man-made trough. It's not a natural feature. One last thing about the Troth Rock. Gary Edelman and I, when we did our book, Devil's Den History and Guide, we were really into this. And I remember that the person who edited our book, we took issue with some of the editing. So at the last moment, we put in the footnotes this paragraph about the Troth Rock, and I think we did it as a humorous aside, thinking she would catch it, but she never did. And we say this in our footnote. The authors have also heard of a recent dish specific to this boulder containing tomatoes, lima beans, corn, and 1 vial of water from the trough, known as Troth Rock stew. And I got to tell you, I can't tell you how many times Gary has made Troth Rock stew. Okay. Number 8, the Tipton Rock at Round Top Park. I first became aware of this. There's a tin type in the collections of the Adams County Historical Society with Henry Stewart in front of this rock. Later, I discovered that Henry Stewart worked for William Tipton at a tin type gallery that was located at an amusement park on the back side of Little Round Top. So I got a copy of this tin type, and of course it's a reversed image, and I had a mirror, and I guess I had to do it like this, and I walked around through the woods on the back side of Little Round Top looking for this particular rock, And thereby, I located the site of the amusement park associated with Round Top Park in the 1880s and 90s. And there are, since then, I've kept my eye out for tintypes with rocks in them, and I have like 7 different images taken in this same area featuring rocks at the Round Top Amusement Park. Number 7, the Elephant Rock. This is a very prominent rock in the southern edge of the Valley of Death, or the Rocky Gorge in front of Devil's Den. And there's actually an 1867 Tyson stereo view, which refers to it as the Turtle Rock. And there's also 1867 Weaver's stereo view that refers to it as Monster Rock. But in the 1890s, I have a reference in a tour book. I think it's a Luther Minig Guide to the Battlefield. And in it, he refers to it as the Elephant Rock. And today, we call it the Elephant Rock. What's really interesting is if it's very difficult to get on top of, but if you climb up to it, on top of the rock, there is a carving from D. Forney, 1849. And we know that's David Swope Forney, who grew up on Baltimore Street and moved south prior to the American Civil War. Number 6, the Sharpshooter Rock on Culp's Hill. And of course, this rock is prominently featured in a sketch done by Edwin Forbes on July 4th, 1863, after the battle was over. He arrived there, he wasn't there during the fighting, and drew sketches in and around that area where the heavy fighting occurred on Culp's Hill. And it was William Frassinito in his book, Gettysburg, A Journey in Time, that highlighted this sketch and pointed out that this rock also appears in early photographs by Matthew Brady and the C.J. Tyson. And so you can see this in various early views. I should also mention that this rock is featured in a diorama of Culp's Hill that is now on display in our lobby that was created by Cliff Bream. Number 5, the Sphinx. Early references to this rock are in the Gettysburg newspapers, and there's actually 2 or maybe 3 images of this rock taken in 1867 by the Weavers. And it's hard for me to imagine somebody taking their photographic wagon around the backside of Big Round Top to get an image of this. But it's a rock that sits on top of another rock, and in the 1890s, when the Gettysburg National Military Park Commission took over the maintenance and care of the battlefield, they named it the Sphinx in one of their early commission reports. And we used to walk in the 1970s and 80s. They had, of course, the Big Round Top Loop Trail, and the Sphinx was featured as part of that trail. And we actually mentioned this rock in one of our Big Round Top videos. In August 2021, a tree fell, hit the Sphinx, and knocked it over. And so today, it's no longer there. In October 2021, Gary Edelman and I recorded a video at the site of the demise of the Sphinx Rock. And we'll probably add that here in the description if you'd like to look at a link to it. It's interesting to me that these rock formations, stood like this one stood for millions of years, and this one no longer stands. And it shouldn't come as any surprise. That's what the rocks on the battlefield do. They erode, and they're very good at it. Number 4, the Curious Rock Formation, or the Curious Rocks. There's actually a Benson Lawsing sketch of these boulders that comes from a book that was published in 1866. And of course, according to this caption we'll show here, it says Devil's Den. This is not Devil's Den. It's a formation on the side of Little Round Top. And there is a William Tipton stereo view, and there is a photograph from one of the early tour books by Jacob Mumper, and it refers to this as Curious Rocks. Now maybe they're just saying the formation is curious, not that the name of the rocks or the Curious Rocks, but that's what we have dubbed them. And it's fascinating that, again, this is another formation, especially amongst kids. You climb down the side of Little Round Top and climb up on top of the rocks. And I did that myself as I was a kid. And who knows how long that rock formation will stand before it also topples over. One last thing, this formation appears in an 1864 drawing, or watercolor, I believe it is, of Little Round Top, and we'll show it here in that image also. Number 3, the John Wheeler Rock. You know, rocks were like billboards for early monuments and advertisements. As a matter of fact, you know, there's graffiti painted onto the rocks of Culp's Hill early on. You know, Rogers liver pills, Hoeflin's German bitters. There's a rock on Little Round Top that had an advertisement for, I think, Cane's liver pills. But also, rocks were used to mark the positions of where troops were involved in the battle. Rocks had things carved into them, and this particular rock denoted the fact that Colonel John Wheeler of the 20th Indiana Infantry was killed near this boulder. And I first learned of this at the Adams County Historical Society through one of the Tipton sample albums. And I could be wrong, but I think it's the only image of this view I had ever seen. I've never seen it for sale in a stereo card, just on this particular view in the Tipton sample album. And so, and for the kids, you know, the younger people out there, you have to understand what I had to go through to find this rock. I had to go to the Adams County Historical Society, bring a camera, and bring a copy stand with lights and close-up lenses that you had to screw into the lens of your 35mm camera. I had to record the image of it, and then I had to take the film and send it away. And then somebody developed the film, sent it back, you went and picked it up, and that's how you got the photograph. And then I took the photograph out onto the battlefield to look for this rock. And I discovered the location of this rock. Perhaps not because I'm the first one who thought about finding location, but I was the first one to drag my heavy equipment to the Adams County Historical Society and record an image of it. And you can still see this rock, although there's no sign of the painted inscription on it today at Devil's Den. Number 2, the Warren Rock, or as a group, the Signal Rocks. Of course, this is one of the most popular rocks on the battlefield. And in August of 1888, a statue was placed on this rock to General Gouverneur Kimball Warren, the chief engineer of the Northern Army during the battle. And General Warren's statue is prominently on this rock, and when visitors come to Little Round Top, everyone wants to climb on the rock and stand there with General Warren. And long ago, the War Department put a plaque on the front of the rock telling visitors that they are not allowed on this rock. But for some reason, no one reads that sign. And when I was an active tour guide, every day, I was kindly telling people that they weren't allowed to walk on or stand on that rock. But the rock, it kind of denotes the area of General Warren's signal station on Little Round Top on July 2nd, 1863. You might know there's another rock not far from it that has a plaque on it describing the efforts of the Signal Corps during the battle. And here again, there is a third rock that has an illustration in Benson Lossing's book, Benson Lossing's Pictorial History of the Civil War in 1866, that shows a signal rock on Little Round Top. And yes, this is a third rock, but it's very close to the Warren boulder. So I think this area is definitely where the signal station was on Little Round Top, according to early sources. Now, we have a few honorable mentions. I'm just going to state, and we'll throw up a couple photographs of these. The Devil's Bath at Devil's Den, where there's a trough and it fills up with water, and theoretically the devil, who you know is a large black snake, would take a bath in that wood of that rock. I don't know when this term was first used, but Jim Tate, a longtime battlefield tour guide, knew it as the Devil's Bath ever since he was a little kid. Gibraltar on Big Round Top. You might know we did a whole video on Gibraltar, and you can check that out. Maybe we'll put a link to that video below here. The Devil's Slipper at the base of Big Round Top. Again, this is a rock that when the Gettysburg National Military Park Commission put in the road at the base of Big Round Top, they featured this rock in their commission reports. And then the Vincent boulder on Little Round Top. There is a carving on Little Round Top in a rock that was done in 1864 or 1865, marking near the spot where Colonel Strong Vincent was mortally wounded on July 2nd. So the …1 rock at Devil's Den, according to, it's just my opinion, is the Table Rock at Devil's Den. The term Table Rock comes to us from an 1867 caption on one of C.J. Tyson's stereo cards of Devil's Den. And the term Table Rock basically is a reference to the fact that people had picnics on top of the rock. At Niagara Falls, there was a Table Rock, and people would picnic on it. And in, I think, 1818, the rock actually snapped and broke off and went down Niagara Falls. And still today, there's a place there called Table Rock, although the Table Rock is no longer there. So rocks that people would sit on, or big flat rocks, were often called Table Rock. You might know that not far north of Gettysburg was a little village called Table Rock. And it was called that because there was a big flat rock in the creek that people had picnics on. So the Table Rock is a fascinating feature to me. It is a boulder that is perfectly balanced on the rock below it. And again, theoretically, at one point, this formation was under the Earth's surface. And as the softer sediments eroded away, the rock became exposed and came to rest on another rock as the ground exposed below that. And this rock is precariously balanced on the rock below it. And undoubtedly, one day, this rock will fall. And if you go to the rock and you look underneath of it, you can see that it's not hanging on by very much. Now, it might not fall tomorrow or the next day, but it will fall one day. Erosion, you cannot stop erosion. It's a natural process. Of course, if we have like an earthquake or something, maybe it'll fall a little sooner. I get immense pleasure out of getting a group of 8th graders under the rock and talking about how it's going to fall one day. They love that. Depending on what angle you look at the rock, I call it the table rock because that's what it was called in an early description. But other people call it the balancing rock, the hanging rock. From one angle, people think it looks like a duck. From another angle, it looks like a rattlesnake's face. And of course, I've been prone to point the backside of it out as looking like the Pink Panther. Maybe we'll put a couple angles of this rock in there. Well, there you have it. So if you have another rock that you think should be on our list, feel free to put it in the comments and, I'll address that. But these top 10 lists are just my opinion, and I'd love to hear from you. So remember, if you like the content that we've been putting up on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe.